muted when you're
We're going to allow panelists to ask any questions. Not panelists, I mean the people to ask any questions. So you're just going to keep your video on through to the end after you speak.
We have attendees here. Hey to attendees. Please pop your names into the chat box. This is so wicked exciting. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself and get myself out of here now and hand it over to Tara and Christy.
Great. You can put us on to Facebook as well too, Mary. Welcome. As you guys are coming on, hey Jessica, hey Joy. Just go ahead and pop your name in the chat box. You can tell us where you're calling in from, and we'll just give everybody a chance to log on. Hey Betty, Judy. Nice to see you, Anne and Teresa. So for today, you will be able to see us, you will be able to see the panelists, you just won't be able to see each other. When you are typing into the chat box, you'll notice it gives you an option to chat to either all panelists or all panelists and attendees. And we would prefer, if you can, to just say to all panelists and attendees, and then everybody can see your comments, your insights. Hey Sharon. So as you're logging on here, we are so excited that you're joining this second annual virtual summit on the essence of caring. And we just ask that you type your name and where you're calling in from in the chat box. We'll give it a few minutes here and let everybody have a chance to get on. We have friends as well joining us on the live stream on Facebook. If you're on Facebook and you plan to stay for the whole time, you can click that register link, and then you'll be able to view us in a Zoom room, and we'll be able to give you a CEU certificate following. But if you don't care about that, staying on Facebook is perfect. Awesome. So many people joining from all over. It's so awesome to see you guys all coming in. Hey, Vicki. Hi, Maureen. Great. Okay. Well, welcome. If you're new, make sure you are able to locate that chat box. We are hopeful that you'll be able to put your insights during any discussions or any Q&A. You can just pop your questions into the chat box, and we'll be sure that they get responded to by Mary or by our panel. But Christy is going to kick us off and introduce our main speaker here for this virtual summit.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to have you here with us today. I'm assuming that if you're here today, that you already know about Mary Coughlin and all her great credentials. And if you want to learn more, you can always check out the Caring Essentials website. So I thought I would tell you a little bit about Mary, maybe some things that you don't know. She has a giant dog named George. She is the lovely mother of 6 children and grandmother to 8. And she would choose mountains over the beach. And she loves to drink her tea in the morning and read research articles. And she also is always planning that next book. And if you don't already know, she's already written 3. She is a visionary and passionate about changing healthcare for all people. I think the only time her brain shuts off is when she sleeps. She pioneered the concept of trauma-informed care for infants and has expanded this framework to apply the concepts of the core measures in trauma-informed care for ourselves, our colleagues, families, as well as infants and children. And so that just makes her view of trauma-informed care and the lens we use to walk the walk in our day-to-day life a little bit different than than others. And so it is with great pleasure today that I get to introduce the founder and CEO of Caring Essentials Collaborative, Mary Coughlin. Let's all welcome her. Yay.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so very much, Christy. Now I know why you asked about mountains. And I am just so wicked excited about this second annual Essence of Caring virtual summit. I'm going to just get myself set up here, you guys, to share my screen. Get ourselves really organized here. Here we go, Essence of Caring. I just have to move things around a little bit because I've got all of the panel images up here. And, you know, the format that we've chosen for his, I'm going to talk for the next hour about the science and a little bit about the soul regarding our topic. And then we'll break out into a panel discussion with some pretty amazing individuals. And so just like any summit or any talk that we do here at Caring Essentials, we like to offer continuing education credit when possible. And so today we will be doing that for all of the folks that are on the Zoom portion of the program. And these are our learning objectives. And so I'm hoping that at the end of this session, you guys will be able to list 3 global nursing and healthcare priorities in the wake of the COVID-19 global pandemic, outline a vision for what is possible and necessary for the future of nursing and healthcare. We'll transition into exploring ways to reawaken your passion and purpose, grounded by caring science. And I'm hoping that at the very end, at the conclusion of today's summit, you'll be able to describe your next step to cultivate personal and professional wholeness in order to transform the face of healthcare for all, as Christy mentioned. My core competency is in the NICU, but I do have experience with patients across the spectrum. And the more I've evolved in my understanding of trauma-informed care in this paradigm, it's just so glaringly obvious that it has relevance across the entire life continuum. And so I thought we would just kind of like take a look back in history and remember 2020, but remember 2020 when it was on the horizon. In recognition of Florence Nightingale's 200th anniversary of her birth, the World Health Organization declared 2020 the International Year of the Nurse and the Midwife. As we all know, nurses and midwives play a critical role in health delivery and health services, and we're the backbone of the healthcare industry around the world. Nurses and midwives devote our working lives to caring for mothers and children, you know, giving immunizations, health advice, doing screenings, caring for older individuals, and generally meeting the everyday health needs of all populations. In many areas in the world, and even here in the United States, nurses are often the first and only point of care in many communities. And so I want you to feel the weight of that, feel the responsibility, feel the courage that it takes to step into the shoes of being a nurse. And, you know, prior to the pandemic, there was a search, or an awareness rather, that the world needed 9 million more nurses and midwives in order to achieve the universal goals established by the World Health Organization for universal health coverage around the globe by 2030. It's 2021, and we're a far cry from that right now. But little did we know, right, back in the beginning, or the end of 2019, the beginning of 2020, what we were about to be confronted with. Whoops. Yep, this sucker. You all know this guy pretty intimately, the COVID-19 virus. And so instead of spending a year celebrating the work of nurses and midwives, we faced a very unexpected twist of fate. Our year-long celebration was thwarted by the tumultuous global pandemic named COVID-19, which literally wreaked havoc in every single corner of the world. And in doing so, casted a spotlight on the vital role, importance, and even heroism of the nurses around the world and other healthcare workers as well. I'm not diminishing their contribution by any stretch of the imagination, but this is International Nurses Day, and I do really want to focus on the nursing contribution to health and wellness. So we've all lived it, we've all survived it, thankfully, but I'm sure we have many scars from the experience. So where are we today? As we start to begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel, what we have endured with this global pandemic has exposed a lot of problems within the healthcare industry around the world. And I'm going to venture to say that many of these problems weren't much of a surprise to the nurses, the physicians, and the clinicians that were working in those settings. What became more obvious and more prominent, and here, at least in the US, literally front page news, was the extent to which our healthcare system was really broken. The systemic racism, the systemic trauma that was inherent into the system, not just here in the US, but literally around the world. As we watched historically marginalized populations, their vulnerabilities, their weaknesses, the inequities that they've endured come front and center. We know that these marginalized populations suffered the most significant hardships in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I just wanted to kind of clarify, when I say marginalized populations, the definition that the World Health Organization uses is marginalized populations are defined as groups and communities that experience discrimination and exclusion, socially, politically, and economically, because of unequal power relationships across economic, political, social, and cultural dimensions. And in the United States, and maybe in your part of the world as well, what we discovered was a disproportionate negative impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on racial and ethnic groups, an increase in sentiment towards Asian Americans, a significant negative effect on women, and I will circle back to that, that challenge, and a negative impact on low-income workers. I wanted to kind of circle back about the women thing because, and I know Justin is our male nurse representative here on the panel, and I'm so grateful that we do have more and more men entering into the profession, but nursing remains largely female, and we need to do more to invite our male colleagues and counterparts to embrace nursing as a profession. But one of the reasons, or actually there are several reasons why women suffered significantly. And as nurses, I know this may resonate with many of you on the call. Women are involved in multiple essential roles, right? Including, the work that we do, our family, household duties, maybe caretaking of other family members or neighbors, when, contrasted to traditional male roles, okay? Although there is, oftentimes a balance amongst these responsibilities, COVID-19 pandemic really disrupted that very ginger or tenuous balance that existed pre-COVID, with this balance of responsibilities that have generally been relegated to women. As COVID, just ravaged the world, we saw daycare facilities and resources and schools closed. Children were staying at home. And so that added an additional burden to the women working in all different sectors, but certainly women in healthcare as well, really struggled with trying to balance this, but still, coming to work and doing the work, their chosen calling. And so this added additional stress and sometimes even stress that became manifested in dysfunction as a consequence of the relentlessness, the ongoing nature of the pandemic. And as I mentioned before, in essential workers, like healthcare professionals, it posed an extra challenge. I remember talking on, several calls during the early stages of the COVID pandemic with my nurse colleagues who are, at the bedside, and the challenges that they had in trying to protect their family in the face of inadequate PPE, inadequate resources, and just the unknown of the COVID virus at that time. And, coming in the basement door, stripping down and, washing their clothes separately, showering, but and staying isolated within their own home from their family. And so, again, thinking about all of the layers of challenges, of suffering, and even trauma that we endured here in the United States, but it's not just in the United States. And I know there's lots of words on this slide, but it's really just for impact, okay? The International Council of Nurses, which is a global organization that supports and represents nurses in all countries around the world, did lots of research in the wake of the COVID-19 and the ongoing pandemic that we're experiencing, and just shared global feedback. And the kind of the common denominator of this is that the COVID-19 effect, which is what the ICN, or the International Council of Nurses, is calling it, is having a significant toll on the mental health and well-being of nurses. This global effect has been described as really traumatic, really impacting the nurses and other healthcare professionals in really significant, measurable ways, causing mass trauma among the world's nurses, beginning with the number of confirmed nurse deaths. And I use that word confirmed nurse deaths as a consequence of COVID, because not all countries delineate a death by role, right, by your job role. So the ICN is reporting in excess of 2,200 nurses. We know that the number is much higher. But we also know that as a consequence of that, as a consequence of the inadequate personal protective equipment, inadequate staffing, that the psychological distress is really overwhelming these individuals. And it's compounded by, in many areas in the world, and certainly here in the United States, abuse of healthcare professionals, protests by anti-vaxxers and conspiracy theorist individuals. And so the weight that nurses and healthcare professionals have had to bear as a consequence of their calling, right? The duty to serve and support and ease the suffering of these victims of COVID was being compounded. It wasn't just the work, it was all of this other stuff that was really overwhelming these individuals. And as a consequence of this, there's grave concern now that 9 million deficit in worldwide nursing is going to get even worse, because as a consequence, through media and journalism and all this other kind of stuff, social media, that the reports of what nursing has had to endure and deal with is actually alienating folks who may have thought that they wanted to enter the nursing career, and they're like, forget that, I'm not signing up for that. We know that we have an aging population globally, and certainly that that affects the nursing population as well. They're estimating 4 million nurses will be retiring over the next 10 years. And so again, you can really see that we're in a really bad way. And I think, and although this may sound like, oh my gosh, Mary, this is like a serious bummer. Why did I sign up to come on this virtual summit? I share this information with the intention of, calling you to action, telling you that, yeah, this is the current state. I can't sugarcoat this or make it nice. This is the current state around the world. And I know many of my colleagues and some of my colleagues here on the call have it even much more difficult than we have in the United States. So what I think we need to do, though, is we need to take what we've learned. We've known all of this stuff. We've known that resources have been scarce for eons, right? Not just, human resources, but equipment resources. We've known this. We borrow from Peter to pay Paul, right? We're always, nurses are great at making things work, because, and a lot of it is because we struggle with getting the new equipment or getting the right equipment that we need. We make do. And and I know the reason why we make do is because we don't want our patients and their families to suffer any more than they already are suffering in the wake of whatever their medical condition or surgical condition may be. But there's a downside to that make do phenomena, if you will, and that is, administration. The business side says, well, the nurses will make it work. So that's not a priority. We're going to focus on something else. And this isn't, I do want to just say, I'm not slamming healthcare at large for the most part, but you all know where the opportunities lie. You all know on this call why caring science is the cure, why caring science is the answer. I mean, caring science, if you just kind of like rewind the tape, is grounded in the ethics of belonging. It's grounded in our awareness of our shared humanity. It expands beyond medical science to acknowledge the relational life forces and even the philosophical underpinnings or dimensions of, unitary field consciousness, and underlying our connection with humanity. It's a humanitarian approach to the work that we do. Human science orientation to human caring processes, phenomenon, and experience is the way we do our work. Our legacy as nurses, as healthcare professionals, at least for me, right? It can't be how technically proficient I was or how great I was at documenting. I want my legacy to be much more than that. I want my legacy to really represent the full caring potential that I have within me that's unique to just me, like the caring potential within each one of you guys on this call is unique just to you. That without you on this planet, the world is less. A caring encounter is less when you don't bring your full self to it. And I really thought this graphic that I grabbed really captured what has been in the past, right? A focus on the disease, a focus on the dysfunction, a focus on the organ system, on the symptomatology. But as Aristotle said, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. We are more than body mechanics. And that's why caring science is so wicked important. And from my reading and my perspective, nurses who develop a strong understanding of caring science are positioned to thoughtfully lead the delivery of intentional and authentic nursing practice within the dynamic and rapidly changing healthcare systems around the world. That's why this is so important. And just talk about serendipity, right? I, of course, subscribe to Jean Watson's newsletter, and because I'm that nerdy about her. And this quote came up on my feed this morning. So, of course, I had to stick this in my slide deck, that caring is ultimately an ontology. And that means it's a way of being. It calls forth a practice whereby one shares one's energy of being and holds an intentional consciousness towards self and others. This caring consciousness then helps to soothe, calm, and potentiate wholeness. It's the secret sauce. It's what it is that we need to bring to the work that we do. I apologize, I hit my button. And so we need to, I think, you probably have seen a lot of these like memes or posts on social media and stuff about like, pre-COVID, people keep saying, we want to go back to when times were normal. And I think it sounds a little cliche because it's been on social media for such a long time, but at least for me, in the wake of this pandemic and just such a bright light being shined on the systemic dysfunction in healthcare, the misaligned priorities, the racism, the hierarchies, the biases, the focus on the almighty dollar or euro or whatever, name your currency, that needs to change. That's not what healthcare is about. That certainly isn't what nursing is about. And so the way we were existing in healthcare wasn't normal to our calling, to the philosophical underpinnings of what it is to be a nurse, to be an authentic healer, to present yourself as a caring consciousness, and be with those and serve them based on your skill set, but not to let your skills be your front face of why you bring value to a patient encounter, but that's your unique toolkit. But it's the you that really is the magic. And I think now, in preparation for this talk, and just my never-ending journey of becoming more trauma informed, I was really pleasantly surprised as I was trying to get a handle on, well, okay, now what, right? What are our global nursing priorities moving forward? And on the next slide, I'm going to share with you some pretty cool and very synergistic and synchronistic priorities, particularly as we talk a little bit about trauma-informed care. But first, I want to bring you to this wicked cool quote that I also found. It's not our footsteps on the sands of time that will be remembered, but our imprints on the hearts of those we love. And I think, take that word love in its most grandest interpretation. I mean, certainly we love our family, we love our friends, but we love our community. And I know as a nurse, as a healthcare professional, I love the patients and families that I am honored to serve. And I want to leave an impression on them that is filled with love. That is, it's not, they don't remember like, boy, she was really good with a stethoscope, or she was really good with an angio, but she saw me. She made me feel safe. She made me feel seen. She made me feel connected. And so here, these are the top nursing priorities that were identified by 6 CNOs here in the United States. CNO is a chief nursing officer. So these are executive nursings in healthcare. When they were asked by the interviewers from the Becker's Hospital Review, which is an e-zine, an electronic magazine that really is kind of cutting edge and really showcases what are the current trends and issues in healthcare at large. These top nursing priorities for spring of 2021 were listed here: stabilizing the nursing workforce. We know, as I had mentioned before, that many of our nurses have either succumbed to COVID, they have retired from nursing as a consequence of the overwork and the distress and the distraught that they've experienced. Trauma-informed leadership. Now imagine me seeing that as a priority. I was like, woohoo, yes, finally. Staff well-being, recruitment and retention. Think about what's involved in recruitment and retention. And skip over patient safety for a sec, employee engagement. All of those aspects are specifically related to the professional practice environment. How well the clinicians in any given setting are valued, are supported, are comforted, are seen and honored. And not, just kind of like, what's the word, like tip of the hat, like, oh yeah, you did a great job, but like authentically. Like I don't need a Starbucks card to, make me feel good. I need to be honored in a different way, in an authentic way, sometimes a very quiet way. And those are the ways that we engage and we recruit and we retain the talented people that we have at the bedside. And because when we don't have those talented, passionate, authentic, committed individuals, patient safety and quality suffers. We need to help staff recover from the trauma that they've experienced over the last 12 months. And helping staff recover from trauma begins with us really evaluating our own experience with the trauma over the past 12 plus months, right? I can't support you who've been at that bedside and who've watched numerous people die, suffer, have horrific loss and feel abandoned if I don't connect with those feelings authentically myself. So these top nursing priorities for spring that I'm translating, it's not just one-way directed. It has to be bi-directional. For authentic leaders, for these chief nursing officers in these various healthcare facilities and systems to really be able to operationalize these priorities, they need to do some soul searching themselves. We need to connect with those things that we've experienced so that we can authentically understand, empathize, and then actualize and take action on, which is kindness, right, to others. I can't be authentically kind to another if I don't really understand what they're feeling, what they're going through. So for us to support recovery and support self-care as a top priority, I need to dig in and figure out, well, what are the things that would help me? What has helped me in the past? What's worked, what hasn't worked? And then what can we offer? Because again, it's not about just saying, oh, well, we'll just make a special room and put some aromatherapy in there and that should make people feel better, right? That's not it. It's about truly unbundling ourselves and discovering what will help us, what works for us in a personal way, not a superficial way, but an authentic way, and recover from the very real financial stress the pandemic has caused. And to be honest, that was basically what they said. And I don't know if this particular CNO was thinking about the healthcare industry and their financial stress, because there has been some significant global financial catastrophic outcomes as a consequence of the pandemic. And obviously that has some relevance, but I think we also have to move from a focus on that exclusivity of the finance and move towards the human financial experience, right? That these individuals, people have lost jobs. I know many of my colleagues in other countries were laid off, were let go because their departments were shut down as a consequence, and the financial stress that had on them, and the knowing that not everyone who died, in 2020 died of COVID, that, many of the morbidities that were in existence still needed to be managed, still needed to be cared for. But the reaction that we had to the pandemic ended up shooting the healthcare industry in the foot and did compromise the health and wellness of many patients who then took matters into their own hands. And I think about people that may have had longstanding cardiac disease and such, and maybe even perinatal conditions that didn't go and seek healthcare because of the fear with the COVID. We know that many women were looking for hospitals that would facilitate the presence of their partner for the birth experience because there were many facilities that weren't. That fear became such an overwhelming aspect of our every lived moment of 2020. And here we are in 2021, and I want to ask you the question, did it serve us? Was it the right thing to do to keep, from my clinical background, mothers and babies apart? How did that serve? I think, what we need to do, certainly as nurses, but also as healthcare professionals, is to examine the language that we use, the language that is used to describe who we are. That, certainly it might sound nice that we're the most trusted profession, but how does that serve us? How does that empower us and enable us to act courageously and be advocates and champions and change makers, right? You can advocate until the cows come home, but if nothing changes, meh, right? And so we need to take on more of an active role as individuals. I know that, within my nursing organizations and my nursing societies, they certainly do advocate on behalf of the membership, on behalf of nursing at large. And that's all well and good, but that's not enough. We need to stand up whenever we hear nursing being disrespected, underappreciated, undervalued in many different settings. And sometimes that setting is on rounds. We need to stop the silence and really stand up. But I also know that silence, that apathy, that frustration also comes from years and years and years of experiencing and bearing witness to trauma that takes its insidious toll on our physical and mental well-being. We need to change the language. We need to change the environments. We need to, as the CNOs mentioned, support self-care, revitalize our nursing colleagues and the nursing environment, the nursing professional practice environment. We need to change the language to become more trauma informed. We use lots of war metaphors in healthcare. And it's pretty ubiquitous. It's the fight on cancer, and we're battling this, and the clinicians on the front line. But I want you to think about how that language feels and the energy that it puts out, particularly in the wake of the energy that Jean Watson talks about, that caring energy. And, when we start to really kind of put the brakes on and re-examine the language, it's not very trauma informed. It's not really very loving. Many diseases, if not all diseases, are an expression of the body's response to life experiences, to transgenerational phenomenon, to physical, emotional, and spiritual states of well-being. Think about the word dis-ease, disease. We know that the majority of non-communicable diseases are brought on by stress. And so how can we use our understanding of caring science? How can we use our understanding of these global nursing priorities and grab the reins to really start understanding what our opportunity is to transform the current paradigm within healthcare? And for me, the question about what is the future of nursing and what is the future of healthcare, I believe it begins with becoming more trauma informed. I think we know, right? We know that nurses are the bridge between the patient and health and healthcare. That, as I mentioned earlier, when I was talking about, when we were going to be celebrating nurses, right? Nurses are often the only care provider in many communities. And so how we show up to these moments of vulnerability for our patients and their families defines us as either caring or not. And so this bridge that I'm inviting us to create as nurses brings us from this healthcare industry experience, healthcare world of the past, of the pre-COVID, and now the COVID experience has really, it's flipped everything upside down, shaken it up, and we can see so clearly all the cracks in the current healthcare paradigm. And as nurses, and we are the leading workforce in the healthcare industry, we've got the numbers, and in those numbers, there is power that we can actually create the future of nursing and the future of healthcare at large. And, I know what that looks like for me, and I'm going to share it with you, because for me, the future of nursing, the future of healthcare, it's not, it's certainly not what we've had in the past, right? It's not, everybody coming to the hospital, but it's caring for people within that locus of safety for babies and families. It's in the parents' arms, right? Can we get back to seeing families at home? I know, many of my colleagues abroad, and of course my colleagues here in the US, telemedicine has really taken on new life. And it's not perfect yet, but we're modeling it. We're evaluating it. There are times when it works really well, and what we're being invited to do is identify, when is it right, and when do we actually go out and visit with the patient? What if we changed our focus from taking babies and young children away from the family and putting them into a hospital environment where they're isolated, alone, frightened? They, probably don't know the people that are caring for them. They feel unsure. Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. They feel unsure about what's happening. Most recently, I heard a story about this sweet 5-month-old who had some complications that were fairly chronic, and the mother was empowered to do lots of the rehabilitative care. I think that's an okay word to use in this setting for that baby. And that mom was feeling super empowered and was making the changes. But, it's not just the disease that we need to be keeping our eye on, right? But keeping that dyad intact. A 5-month-old and the mother, they're building trust, they're building attachment, they're building bonding. But healthcare clinicians got all impatient and said, you know what, we're really worried now about where things are going. So we're going to take that little 5-month-old, we're going to put them in a rehab facility hospital without the parents, because of course it's COVID, and isolate that. And we're going to just work on the muscles and the bones of this person and make them all better, and then ship them back and they'll be fine. Really? But that's the mindset. And my future of nursing, my future of healthcare, that would never cross anybody's mind. That would become a never event. I think of other situations. I know this other story made a splash in Arizona. And I don't know all the details. And so if I'm misrepresenting, cut me some slack. But, there was a baby that was born with congenital heart defect, as I remember. And the mom understood what was going on, but the baby was transferred to another facility without any consent, without even coming to visit the mom. The mom had tested positive on a preliminary screen for COVID, but then when she went for the PCR, it was negative. That negative PCR didn't mean anything to the clinicians. That mother was restricted from visiting the child, and when she was able to get in, she was removed from the bedside by security. Look at what we've done in the perinatal world by separating babies from their mothers because of this COVID. Why? Because we don't have the right equipment. We don't have adequate equipment. Fear is governing all of our decisions. Do you understand what's going to, how this is going to play out, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 10 years, 20 years down the road for these children then that have been separated from their family and all of the trauma and toxic stress that they have endured as a consequence of that? There is a price to be paid. I think of the mothers that have had to give birth without their partner. And I get it, nurses, I know you're loving people, but if you guys think that you're a replacement for somebody's, love of their life, you're nuts. Your ego is driving the car. And we need to get rid of that. My future of nursing and healthcare, that doesn't exist. There is no ego. We are there fully in service to others. And that's what fills up our cup and nurtures our soul. The knowing that we were able, I'm sorry, I'm getting all preserve the intactness of that dyad, whether it's a mother-infant dyad or a couple dyad or a husband and wife. My husband told me this story. It was really heartbreaking. One of his colleagues was hospitalized with COVID, super, super sick, on the precipice of death. And I don't know, who the loving soul was that allowed the wife to come in basically to say goodbye to her dying husband. And as she sat there and the husband was in a medically induced coma, I hope I'm remembering the story correctly, but she was, holding her husband's hand and speaking to her husband. The healthcare professionals are watching as the patient's vital signs were improving with the presence of the mother. So the wife rather. So they let her stay longer. And what they discovered is something that I think many of us on the call know all too well. And I come back, I'm always brought back to the story of this incredibly tiny person that I was privileged to care for during my early neonatal nursing career days at the Brigham and Women's Hospital. This really tiny person who was born at 24 weeks and had growth restriction and was on the oscillator, maxed out in pressors. Parents had not been allowed to hold this little person for better than 2 weeks because she was too sick to be held. And finally, she was failing. And so in the middle of the night, when oftentimes this happens, the team decided that we were going to redirect care. That's our euphemism to withdraw life support. But before we did that, we would allow the baby to be held by the mother. And so there in the middle of the night on the oscillator, I had several colleagues, respiratory therapists, everybody helping me move this teeny tiny person with the oscillator and everything in place onto the chest of her just devastated mother, and get them all squared away. Everything was, equipment looked safe and everything. And I stepped out to do my documentation. And it wasn't long after that that the baby, just like that husband, vital signs started to improving. I found myself decreasing the oxygen. I found myself decreasing the pressor support. And it became very obvious very quickly that this baby now found her reason to live. And that reason to live was the love and presence of her mother. We've denied so many people that experience over the COVID and before COVID, right? My future of nursing and healthcare, that will never happen again. And everyone on this call, I challenge you to make that never happen again. The future of nursing and healthcare begins with understanding the biology of toxic stress, the biology of how our emotions affect our physiology. That when I'm stressed out, I am having a biochemical response to my emotional state that when it is left unchecked or unaddressed over time can actually erode my homeostatic integrity. The future of nursing is that all clinicians, nurses, physicians, therapists, administrators will understand this, will become trauma informed, and so that they can act from the heart and the hands, informed obviously by the head, but to lead with that heart, to lead with that compassion, to really reduce this iatrogenic trauma, because that's what we've created. We've created the trauma that these individuals are experiencing. The future of my nursing, the future of my healthcare, that will be a never event. But in order to do that, right? I mean, we really need to step up. We need to be courageous. We need to be visionary, if you will, and come up with a vision of what is possible, not what you're told, not this is how we've been doing it for the past 30 years. So, get in line, but think differently based on what we know. Move from an evidence-based approach to an evidence-informed approach. It's a subtle distinction, but it's very important. And it should be human-based care, caring-based care that is informed by our evidence, but not dictated by fear and the way we've been doing things. That's the future of nursing. That's the future of healthcare that I want to experience in the future, and to own that, to take the actions that are necessary to cross that bridge, and know that as we cross that bridge, it's going to feel a little scary. We're going to feel a little bit tentative. We're going to be looking over our shoulder and saying, is anybody coming? And I'm going to be right there behind you. And not just me, but an entire movement of trauma-informed professionals who will understand and change the face of healthcare. The answer, my friends, is not to go back to the way we used to do things, because that did not serve anyone. And if you're true to yourself right now in this moment, I'm going to ask you, did it serve you? Because now, knowing all that I know and having experienced all that I've experienced, it didn't serve me. It wasn't the nursing that I thought I was going into when I graduated nursing school back in 1982. I felt like I got hit by a Mack truck when I first landed in my first nursing job. And all of that benevolent, caring, compassion was moved aside. Let's make the future of nursing and the future of nursing education be hardwired and anchored in compassion and understanding. of what it is to be trauma informed, to understand that we all have experienced trauma, certainly in 2020, but even before that, that this experience of the COVID-19 pandemic has just been superimposed onto a history, our own story of the traumas, big and small, right, that we've all experienced. And we've grown through some of them we've buried. And so the future of nursing is really about stopping and unbundling as we move across that bridge, rediscovering who am I and who have I been called to be and become. I love that word become. It's because it's wicked aspirational, right? There's always an invitation to improve. And that's, the journey that I've been on in leading this movement of becoming more trauma informed. And I invite you to also join us in this movement to become more trauma informed with each and every breath we take, with each and every moment that we are honored and invited to share with another who feels vulnerable, who feels disconnected, who might feel frightened and alone. All right, well, I want to thank you very, very much for your attention and certainly look forward to the questions that you may have for us. But first, I'm going to hand the presentation over to Tara, who will be the moderator along with Christy for our panel discussion with these amazing professionals that you see here on the screen. Tara? I'll go ahead and shut my video off. Sorry.
Just laying that fabulous foundation for us. We're so honored now to be able to introduce to you a panelist group here that everyone is within the Trauma-Informed Professional Certificate Program. And they're going to share with us today how that program has really helped to reawaken their purpose and their passion, really considering how the program has relit something within inside them related to this essence of caring that this virtual summit is all about. So it is a great pleasure that I get to share a bit with you about Justin Parsley, who is our first panelist. Justin is the clinical educator for the cardiac service line at Children's Hospital and Medical Center, Omaha. With a background in clinical care nursing, Justin joined the Trauma-Informed Professional Certificate Program as a part of a collaborative from Children's to improve neurodevelopmental care for patients, specifically pediatric patients in the cardiac critical care unit. And as faculty of this program, I have the privilege of reading reflections of the scholars enrolled. And I can tell you, Justin has blown us away with some of his insights. And so after the program, Justin plans to continue working with his interdisciplinary team to really support neurodevelopmental initiatives, provide staff education, and identify opportunities to continue to improve care for babies, children, and their families in the CCU. So it is with great honor that I present to you Justin Parsley.
Hello, everybody. So I guess just thinking about the question of what this program has meant to me, the biggest part that I think has been beneficial has been the focus on self-reflection. Initially at the start of the program, there's a lot of personal reflection to kind of understand where you're at in this journey. And that has been, I would say, invaluable, especially after 2020, as we know, was a very difficult year. And just kind of looking back on my career, going through the critical care environment, I did about 4 years of adult care. And then I've done 6 years of pediatric critical care before joining this role, which I've been in for a couple years now. But just like thinking back and reflecting on what changed in those years of when I was transitioning roles or looking for something different. And it's a lot of it, I think, has been this trauma that we talk about, and at the time probably didn't realize it. I know one of the modules recently completed, there was a talk from Brene Brown, and she was kind of talking about hate within the political climate within the United States after what happened last year, and just really talked about how in order to allow that, you had to have a dehumanizing element. And in a way, like looking back on my career, it's almost like there was that point where you weren't really getting that good connection with patients. You weren't really I wasn't really having like a passion to go in every day and do the work for these patients. And I knew at the time, just recognized, like looking back, that it was, for me, I was not doing justice to my patients at the time, because I wasn't acknowledging that within my own care, I was in a way dehumanizing these patients, because you do these things like, one of the things that popped into my head was like oral care with intubated patients, and they're often sedated, and sometimes you just go and you just do the oral care, not even think about it, and then check that off your list. And so thinking about this and like the trauma-informed approach and how important it is to not only walk some of your patients through those things, but also not forget that human element to the patient. And that's through all this kind of self-reflection, it's really been eye-opening to kind of reflect on my past experience and how that's gotten to me where I am today. And I think the journey has gotten me to the same place, but it feels, I guess, better to recognize what my motivation has been and understand how that has impacted me in order to kind of move forward. So just, I can't express enough how great it's been to do that like honest self-reflection and think about things in a different light. And the content has been amazing to help facilitate that. I think as caregivers, we often tell our patients, our family members, how important self-care is, but we don't always take the time to do it ourselves. And so rather than relying on myself to do this self-reflection that I know is important, it's been great to have prompting questions, content that's relevant to kind of think about things differently. I know one of the recent ones I was thinking about too, just like talking about self-reflection and whatnot, but the prompting questions like just really make you think harder, and it has helped me become more invested in the program. I think initially I was a little hesitant because of seeing this program, and it's like really heavily NICU focused, and as I've only really partially taken care of like neonates for my experience, but now that we have this cardiac population that we're seeing from the neonatal period, it just shows how relevant that is. And more into it, like getting more into the program, you realize how much connectedness to other population it has, and even in personal life. So it's just been really good to like kind of go through and like think about things that you never thought about before, or just having the way that either Mary or someone else like puts it just clicks. One of the things Mary, I think, had said in one of the recent ones I watched was talking about how things happen kind of at the right time. And like I said, initially when I signed up for this was through the collaborative, so I wasn't sure how much it would apply to me or how much it would apply to beyond the NICU population. And so it's just been really refreshing to see how universal it can be. And then also, like I said, just happening at the right time. It's kind of felt like this whole 2020 happened and all this craziness. In addition to that, we're expanding our hospital, moving into a new unit, COVID, of course, and then all the other political climate of last year, how that kind of impacted me. And I think it was it's been fortuitous, I think, to say the least, to have this program and to be able to reflect back on it and then continue forward and actually feel more hopeful at this point than I was last year at the same time. And so I can't say enough about the program and about the faculty and the content and how relevant it is, and how, like Mary said, we're hopeful that this is the future of healthcare and applying that. And so just happy to be a part of it.
Wow, Justin, thank you so much for your honest sharing and for being here as a panelist. We really appreciate your insights. It's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So now I have the pleasure of introducing our next panelist. I'm sorry, my eyes are going down because on my screen I'm like looking at Ramya. But Ramya Kumar is a certified speech language pathologist specializing in infant and pediatric feeding development. She is a board certified specialist in swallowing, a certified neonatal therapist, and an international board certified lactation consultant. Ramya is a graduate of Caring Essentials Quantum Leap program, and she is passionate about creating long-term developmental and mealtime successes for her patients and families. Her philosophy to patient care is deeply rooted in the belief that every patient, no matter how small, has a voice, and that families should be empowered to be active participants throughout the journey. It's my pleasure to welcome insights from Ramya.
Thank you so much, Christy. Can you all hear me? Okay. So when I was thinking about this a lot when I was asked if I could, was willing to be part of this panel, and I always have this mush in my head, and then I kind of start to put words down, and it's almost a nice reflection for myself. So thank you for the opportunity, because these are opportunities for me to reflect on my trauma-informed journey as well. But I was going through a phase of a couple of years ago, maybe, where I was searching for my purpose. I felt like I was in a rut, kind of just in this rat race, the same thing, start of the day, end of the day. And how I was feeling at work was not in alignment with my values or my passion. And I think really essentially my highest potential, or what I felt like my calling was in this lifetime. And so that's actually when the universe brought Mary and the concept of trauma-informed care into my life. I had watched, different webinars here and there as parts of different conferences, but I was actually on a plane ride, and I never pay for Wi-Fi on a plane. And I don't know why, I was called to. And the minute I logged into the Wi-Fi, a reminder popped up about a Q&A session, or like an info session that Mary was doing with another leader, Mel. And so I joined as I was on the plane, and just listening to them, it just brought tears to my eyes, because I felt like I knew that this is what I needed. And so my journey with Traumainformed, my formal journey, I guess, started with that Quantum Leap program, which is a different program that Mary offered at the time. And I went in thinking I was gonna, get all the tools to be a better clinician, make these changes through QI initiatives, and all of that. And I did get all of that, but I got a lot more. At the time of going through that process, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And so I was now experiencing a very different depth of caregiving. And I was experiencing trauma and compassion fatigue. And I knew that all in my head, but I didn't have the space to process all that was going on in my heart. I was exhausted physically, mentally. Some of you have been on that journey with me here, and I appreciate that. And I had my personal habits that I've always had, meditation, journaling, a lot of spiritually based exercises, but I needed to give myself permission to step back and to heal so that I could keep giving. And that was what the trauma-informed process brought for me. I had the research now to back up how I was feeling in my head. So that's what Mary calls the science. But I also had all the heart-based, the warm fuzzy stuff, I guess, the soul. But even that was backed by research, which was even cooler because it took me to a whole different depth. I was able to put words to what I was feeling. And then COVID-19 hit, which we've been talking about today, and we all know, and that's a whole nother level of obviously trauma and fatigue. But being trauma informed again just allowed me to put myself first. I had to throw all the QI, the program development stuff, all those goals just kind of out the door momentarily and just bring heart to my interactions. For my own sanity, for everyone else I came into contact with, and sometimes maybe they didn't even realize what they needed. And then after that is when I was led to join the TIP certification program, the Trauma Informed Professional. And I always like to say, I feel like anytime we think of a certification, I mean, I have a lot of letters behind my name. I've done a lot of certifications. And we often think of it as the skill-based thing, like a competency, another rat race to kind of prove ourselves and show what we can do and pass another test. But I really feel like the TIP program is a lifestyle choice and a lifestyle change, in my opinion. It's how you live. It challenges you to really see your highs, your lows, and everything in between. So we can really pause and I think about our own stories, how we impact our interactions. And it pushes you to look beyond processes and protocols, like Justin was saying too, and get back to that space where human relationships becomes that essence of healing. And so for a long time, I struggled because I would say, we just need to put the care back in healthcare. Like we don't have care left. We just have the health part. And I feel like trauma-informed care is the key to that lock, that call to action, like Mary was talking about earlier. And while my immediate context, started with the NICU and kind of where I practice, I feel like this process really has given me deep lessons personally, and being trauma-informed has taken my patient care, my bedside care to another level. So previously, I may have sympathized with even a patient or their family, but now I feel like I empathize. And Brene Brown, who a lot of us are fans of, talks about how the power of empathy, saying, I'm in it with you. I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to feel with you. And to let you know that you're not alone. And I feel like that quote is just so deep, and really guides my interactions. And I didn't have the words for it before, even though I felt like I was doing it. So I think that is the essence of caring, finding that human connectedness. I've watched and I've reflected on my interactions. And even when I hear about moms or dads now, for example, where it's like we're so quick to label them, oh, they're so needy, they're so disconnected, they're so princessy, they're so this, they're so that. I feel like I now have the words and the confidence to challenge my team back, and say, well, can we think about the mom's why? Like, why is she doing what she's doing or saying what she's saying? Like, can we dig deeper? Can we scratch the surface one more level deeper and go beyond that iceberg? And kind of see where this is coming from. So I think that's, again, what trauma-informed to me has meant a lot, is going beyond that immediate view, clear that glass, go deeper. What's also been interesting for me is my husband is doing the trauma-informed professional certification with me, and he's not a medical or healthcare provider at all. He's an engineer, and he has a passion for healing through music. And so that, I think, has also been really interesting because, yes, while this has started from a NICU context, so to speak, the reach is far, beyond that, and that's why I say it's really a lifestyle change. I think going through it, even, it's been interesting to watch his perspective of things, or sit together and do modules together and reflect, and it's deepened our relationship with each other. We joke sometimes now, and we'll say things like, "You're not being trauma informed" to me in that response. But as much as we joke about it, we have like a common jargon, and we know that we can be better humans, and we are on the journey of being better humans for those around us, personally and professionally. So I am so like beyond grateful for this opportunity, this process, and I think just really put thoughts and words and even just research and science behind what was already my spiritual journey. And so thank you again, all of you, for this opportunity.
We really appreciate how honest you are and your contributions for trauma-informed care. To our final panelist here, I have the privilege of introducing to you Shannon Frey. She is the supervisor of speech pathology at Omaha Children's Hospital. And I have personally had the privilege of working beside Shannon at Children's Hospital of Illinois, and can share with you firsthand just how passionate and insightful she is. She just has a transformative way of really integrating this trauma-informed approach across the developmental continuum, and really was a driving force behind this emphasis to push Mary's work beyond the walls of the NICU, and that it really is for all babies, for all children. And through Shannon's project in Quantum Leap, she was able to really highlight that. And so she is also a graduate of that program, similar to Ramya, and is now a part of the Trauma-Informed Professional Certificate Program. She's also NAMP certified and has a vast knowledge regarding developmental care and supporting eating experiences. She's a wealth of knowledge. I'm super, super excited to share, to introduce Shannon Frey.
Thank you, Tara. That was so sweet of you. I kind of thought about this question a little differently than I originally thought I would, but like to Justin's point, this process is very reflective. So I took some time to think about my journey to where I am today and how I got here, and how the Trauma-Informed Certification Program really led me to where I am today. So my journey towards becoming a speech pathologist started in my undergraduate career when I was at the University of Iowa. I had the unique privilege of tutoring kids within the inpatient pediatric unit. And I spent hours with those families and kids learning about 7th grade geometry and algebra, writing papers, and really providing hope for those kids that someday they would walk back into their school and join their classmates and friends again. But it wasn't, for them, it wasn't about making sure they kept their grades up or even, reaching those core competencies within their grades. But it was about providing hope and a sense of normalcy during a time where many things were outside of their control. So after graduate school, I ended up here in Omaha at Children's. And I was serving at that point as the primary inpatient communication therapist. So within that role, I worked with babies, children and families while they were living at the hospital, which is something obviously no parent or child ever dreams of. My passion for continuing to provide hope and a sense of normalcy was still a part of my everyday job. So as a baby spent their first birthday in the NICU, or while I spent time with a 2-year-old who was waiting for a heart, I was able to be a part of those children and families' journeys and stories, which I didn't take lightly. And while my focus at that time was providing developmentally appropriate activities for those families in a non-developmentally conducive environment, it was still providing families with a sense of normalcy and play when their lives were far from normal. And my passion remained steadfast in providing those families with a sense of hope that one day they would be home, they'd be able to carry those skills over into their home environment. And despite kind of their hard setbacks early in life. So, once their child went home, they'd be able to thrive and, be stable to be able to focus on those other things other than living. Even though I had that passion and that purpose, I still felt like something was missing. Like Tara mentioned, God placed me back in Illinois near my family, and I ended up in a setting I swore I would never practice in, which was the NICU. But I was really blessed with two of the most amazing mentors, Tara being one of them, Christy as well. And my 3-year NICU mentorship officially began. While I missed those older kids, my heart was changing and seeing the importance of nurturing that infant-child bond that would really set the stage for those developmental milestones to come that I was focusing on in my previous position. The importance of every touch, of empowering parents to be primary caregivers at the bedside, and the importance of managing pain and stress for the best neurodevelopmental outcomes was really instilled in me at that time. And my NICU mentors introduced me to Mary Coughlin and her work. And I knew instantly that was part of my practice that was missing, or that I felt was missing. While I knew I had skilled eyes and skilled hands, I learned quickly that it wasn't about me or what I could provide, but really it was about the parents and the babies. And it was my job to really help guide mom to protect against pain and stress, to teach mom how to watch the baby's cues for feeding, and the importance of sleep for the most nurturing care. So I wanted to share all of this newfound knowledge with the world because I felt like it just needed to be shared, and knew that this concept known as trauma-informed care was what was missing and could easily be integrated into therapy practices. So, a lot of you on here are nurses, and I'm not a nurse, but I knew that the importance of this work could really be integrated, like Justin mentioned, into any healthcare provider. So that was the start of my trauma-informed journey. Like Tara mentioned, then I got into a professional mentorship with Mary through the Quantum Leap program. And 2 years ago, I found myself back in Omaha at Children's. This place is so great. So if you ever leave, you just have to come back. I started my professional mentorship, like I mentioned, and came back to the rehab department with really a refreshed look on what therapy could not only look like in the inpatient setting, but in the outpatient setting as well. So just because a child discharges from the hospital doesn't mean that their trauma of this place leaves them. So how are we supporting those kids and those families when they return for outpatient care, and just being in this building can initiate or bring back some of that trauma? How can we help to improve our pain and stress management, sleep, skin to skin practices on the inpatient side? I knew there was so much work to be done. So throughout the last 2 years with the leadership role that I eventually landed, like Justin mentioned, we have a collaborative here in Omaha where I've really been able to support a team of trauma-informed professionals. We have, I think, around 14 people in our organization enrolled in the trauma-informed care certification that are multidisciplinary. So it's nursing, it's child life, it's educators, it's therapists, all disciplines, who are going through this certification together, which is amazing. We're integrating this work throughout the organization, but specifically, like Justin mentioned, in our cardiac care unit, working towards laying a foundation of trauma-informed care in all of our practices, and really within our new developmental care team that we've established. So this certification and this work has really just reignited a fire within me to provide the best care to all patients, no matter their setting and no matter their age. So this care really extends beyond the walls of the NICU and should be integrated, really, like I mentioned and Justin mentioned, into every healthcare professional's practice. So not just nursing, not just therapists, but it's, the teachers on the floors, and it's the respiratory therapists, it's the custodians who come into the room, and really thinking about, how we change healthcare. So it will not only improve like infant-child bonds, parent empowerment, confidence, but will really, encourage these kids to thrive long into their childhood, if that's their plan. And just like Justin, I'll have to say that the families we treat are always our top priority, but the work through this certification has also taught me the importance of taking care of ourselves. So I have worked in work groups within our organization here at Children's to help our team members write self-care goals on as part of their annual reviews, to participate in bereavement pauses and debriefs during times of grief, to process those hard feelings that we go through, and really to focus on our self-care to preserve our longevity in our careers. The work we do is so hard, and research has shown that that can lead to compassion fatigue and burnout, secondary trauma, and due to these intense and emotional situations that we find ourselves in. And if we don't intentionally intervene and work through those feelings, we, won't have longevity in our careers and will lead to that burnout. So I challenge you all, not only to be part of this program, but to really think about how you care for yourself, how you're caring for your team around you that you see every day, in order to reduce the long-term effects on you as you're doing this most important work.
Wow. Oh, the three of you, you more than answered the question about how the Trauma-Informed Professional Certificate Program has impacted you and ignited or reignited passion for the people in your lives, and also the passion for yourself and how you take care of yourself. So amazing. I loved all your words. Thank you so much. What we'd like to do now is just invite all of our panelists back, and Mary too, and open this up for any questions that anybody viewing right now has. You can type them into the chat, but if you feel comfortable and can unmute to talk, we love to hear your voice as well. So step out and feel free to just take this opportunity to ask anyone a question, anything that's on your mind.
Chat for all of you panelists with positive comments and thankfulness. So definitely check that out. We can unmute you if you are having trouble. You can do the raise your hand feature. You just have a little hand. I don't know if you'll be able to see. Kind of a hand goes there in the corner. Looks like we have a couple of people raising their hand here. Sheila Wilson, are you able to unmute?
Yes, I'd like to ask a question. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. When Mary Coughlin started all of this, as Traumainformed, did you all really understand what she was trying to say? Did you all
Thanks,
really
Sheila.
know what you were getting into?
I dove right in, Sheila. I drank the juice, dove right in. I think it has been a journey in kind of piecing out what you can really understand and change in your practice. And then once you have that piece down, moving to the next. So it's great work. It's a journey, definitely, to get there.
It certainly sounds with the three of you panelists that you all had kind of like different experiences, but they all kind of came into all underneath this Traumainformed. It sounds, I am so glad that I was able to get on to the summit today and listen to all of you, and to say, when Justin talked about mouth care, yeah, you took out the lemon glycerin, swabbed it around. Yeah, that's all right. Too much liquid, you just suck it out. But now you know, and that's so important. Yeah. And to listen to all of these little guys and their parents, that's hard work. We're all individuals. We're all so different. I congratulate all of you. Thank you. And Mary, You are just one wicked one. Coming from Boston, that's kind of, you gotta know her.
Thank you
So-
so much, Sheila. I'm so glad you were able to come.
Oh, I'm glad that I could come. I've been following you and wondering, I'm getting to the elderly age. Should I really get involved in this? You know what I'm trying to do. But I will mute myself and I'll stop. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Sheila.
Thank you so much,
So
Sheila,
lovely.
for sharing.
I think one of
Vicky,
the,
oh, Justin, yes, please.
I was just gonna say, I think one of the things that helped me, I probably didn't jump into it as fast as Shannon did, but one of the big things that kind of set me on the right path was the mastermind session, and like hearing experiences of other people from across the country, across the globe, kind of talk about this universal experience of having a need for trauma-informed care. And so I think that having those sessions, other than just doing like your own work, but having them reinforced by other people who are in the program or have completed the program or are in the same boat as you, maybe not even starting the program yet. And that was super helpful to kind of have that relation and hear about all the experiences and then actually tie it back into the content that you're going through.
And I think for me, I'll add, I actually came from a non-healthcare background. So my previous career was in higher education. I worked with undergrads, and I was like a conduct officer, residence hall staff. So I dealt with a lot of discipline things, emotional stuff, self-injury, etc. And so I think like when I switched into healthcare, I felt like there was this gap or like lack of understanding of the humanness. And it became just about the body and the number and the person versus the experience. And so this for me was very easy to jump into because I was like, finally, there's something here to give me the words and the knowledge to bring my previous experience, my previous career into this setting. So it came a little bit more naturally, I think, partly also just where my journey has been spiritually as well. So it was totally exactly what the universe brought to me when I needed it, and it was not difficult to jump in at all. It's interesting again watching my husband though, who like struggled in the book because he was like, I don't understand this biology stuff. I ran away from it in high school. And so again, just I think watching those perspectives, I think it is doable, even though it feels like you may not get it initially.
Next, Vicky Gallagher. Vicky, are you able to unmute?
I think I did. At least I saw that I was able to, so I won't take much time. Thank you for letting me join. Lots of good information. I tried to write as fast as I could because they're words of knowledge I need to be able to keep, but I kind of failed on that one. So hopefully we'll be able to, watch the video of this recording. So, but my question is we have a lot of parents, not by their own steadfast refusal, but they are having a problem. They're not refusing, but comply with our treatment recommendations. We all know that the NICU, PICU all have trauma incorporated in the environment and the individual parents and the babies. My component is parents are having trauma, so we do have to understand that we have to work with, but how do we go about this refusal? I don't want to do it my way. I'm their parent. I'm the mom, I know best, where we do communicate, but what other forms of communication, nonverbal, verbal, what can we do to bring them into the fold to see the rationale of the treatments, of the plan of care? What is that bedside nurse trying to work with you on, the OT, PT, and lactation? So that component too. If you want to address one, discipline, fine. If you want to put it all together, that would be beneficial because then I can share to help the other disciplines that I work with. Now I'm night shift, so it's a little different, but let's help our parents as much as we can, please. And I did say I was going to be short, but I wasn't, was I? So I don't know who wants to answer, but please help.
Maybe kick us off, and then our panelists will join.
Yeah, I saw Shannon too. So, well, I think, Vicki, it's unfortunately there's not one easy answer to just, flip a switch and make it all better. I think it's a process of building trust, building, collaboration, helping people feel like they have choice, and reminding ourselves that communication isn't just words falling out of your mouth. That communication is really, it's a bidirectional thing. So when we communicate, we also have to listen to what it is that they're saying, and find the deeper meaning. Because I find oftentimes, and you may have a specific situation that you're thinking of, but I would find oftentimes that resistance, if you will, or non-compliance was often an expression of the parents' frustration and really wanting to, assert some semblance of control, some semblance of role identity. I'm the parent. Is there anything I can do here that, helps me feel like I'm the parent? So I think it's a journey that you have to go on to cultivate that, but there are probably some strategies that maybe some of the other panelists can share, or insights about this as well. Anybody?
I was just gonna say, kind of to echo Mary, but throughout this journey, Vicki, it's really been about learning how to truly integrate the parent into the care team. So like Mary said, having them feel like they have a choice, but also empowering them to feel, that is their baby. They do know their baby best. So while there may be medical decisions that they're unable to make independently, they should feel like they have choices and care, insight into the plan of care. And then, specifically as a therapist, if it's, a feeding recommendation, I should be working through the hands of that parent. They should be holding, they should be feeding. It's not about what I can do, but really how I can impart that knowledge into the parents so they are doing those things. It's a journey. It didn't come overnight. But I think having those parents feel like their baby is theirs and it's not the NICU's baby or the CCU's baby.
Yes, thank you, because I know that's kind of my train of thought. I've been an ICU nurse for 40 years, and I have brought in parents that are very scared of their baby, and then, help them grow. I was wondering if I were to mimic more, not mimic, but do more of these behaviors and communication. Has anybody found that their staff around them, their colleagues, are picking up on that and then see that that is working for that parent or those parents? Will that be beneficial? Because my reason for my question is I'm in that environment. I'm seeing and hearing parents say things, and I'm try to interact with my colleagues of bringing those parents to that bedside in a manner that allows them to have more autonomy with their baby. I just, I can't force another nurse to do A, B, and C, but will different techniques or words, will that be beneficial for other coworkers to pick up?
Absolutely, Vicki. Never underestimate the power of role modeling. There's this wicked awesome quote by Helen Keller that I won't remember the whole of it, but it just says, you can always do something, and people will notice that. And just because things don't happen quickly, never lose sight of that real reality, that people are watching you. Even when you're not like in an official role modeling role, people are watching you. And so it's always an opportunity for you to exemplify, the highest expression of trauma-informed care, the highest expression of compassion in any given moment. And just, my mother-in-law is saying, an inch is a cinch, a yard is too hard. Begin small and build on that. I think it's wonderful what you're doing, I mean, if you, by role modeling that, particularly on night shift, It's so tough.
I
So
would
true.
100% agree with that too. I use this analogy that my spiritual teacher often talked about. You want to be in, like, when it's dark, you want to be the street light that's shining and just quietly showing the way versus the barking dog that's still distracting you and you don't really know where you're hearing the sound
Wow.
from.
That is a wonderful quote, wonderful
Yeah.
words, because then that can stay into our mind, and that's how it will be then distanceated throughout the environment, whether it's in this feeder grower room, you know, the critical babies, wherever we are at, and our lives ourselves.
Yeah. I also
'Cause,
feel
you
like
know,
with your earlier question a little bit, Vicky, like, it's also, I feel like a lot of, I mean, what we see is a reflection often of what's inside of us, is truly what I believe. It's a mirror. And so sometimes we see that frustration or their control or whatever. And I often challenge myself to step back and be like, what within me is happening right now that might be manifesting as that experience. So I have something to learn from that. Is that my control over how I want them to position and feed and tip down and 3 sucks and whatever. And now that's what I'm projecting and what I'm getting back. So I think that's just been another lesson that's hard, but that I try to keep in mind. So.
No, we're all up for lessons. That's what life is learning. So I will take that as more of little things to put in my brain for my tool belt to then go ahead and look more at myself also, and then be able to bring it out in a positive way, not negative, you know, surrounds us, but yes, the positivity has to be there. No matter what baby we're working with, what parent, what ethnicity, you know, their health literacy, any of it, we have to bring forth our best so we can give good patient care. I mean, excellent patient care, not good, excellent patient care and family care. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vicki. We'd love for anybody else to raise their hand or unmute. These have been wonderful questions and insights to just spark a really good discussion. So we have a little bit more time if you would like to unmute. Anne.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, so I'd like to challenge everybody out there that maybe works in a university setting or a place that does a lot of research, that kind of stuff. I'm so curious of what we are doing, particularly to babies or just even young children who were hospitalized during COVID and never saw a human face. And, you know, I just kind of, you know, they, for the most part, they probably just think that face, you know, that the face is eyes only and everything else is just vacant. And so I would like to try, anybody out there, start looking, what did we do to them for, you know, for this past year? And it's going to continue on for a while. I think that our kids that are in the NICU for months on end, what are we doing to them? So that basically that was just a challenge. I don't think there's any answer to that, but you know, anybody who's out there that has the means to do that, if there's anybody's listening that, you know, maybe they're in psychology field, maybe they're in the university, maybe they're nursing students looking for a senior research project, anything, but I think we really need to start studying this.
I think people have started looking at this from a research perspective, and I know Ramya has investigated this. So I just want to make one comment, and then I'm going to have put Ramya on the hot seat and have her jump in. But one thing, and I, you know, there's absolutely consequences, right? Because there's consequences to everything, right? But I do know that what's really interesting about mammals, in particular with their faces, that emotions are most prominently conveyed and interpreted right here, right? Like right here in the across the eyes and the brow, all right? And so, I mean, there's the little shining light in this that you can exude joy and communicate joy and concern just based on, and I forget the name of the name of the nerves that are doing all of this. It's in the polyvagal theory. He talks a lot, Stephen Porges talks a lot about this part of the, you know, the facial anatomy that helps communicate emotions, but and mirror neurons are part of that, Betty, absolutely. But I wish I could remember what the name of it is. Maybe Ramya knows, but I don't want to freak you out about putting you on the spot for that one too, Ramya. But Did you see, Anne, did you see the little mask that Ramya was dancing around on her screen with?
Yes.
Super cool.
Yeah, and it was like, unfortunately, you know, with American healthcare, it all comes down to cost. And it'd be a while to get that one, but
So that was actually what, so I mean, sorry, I'm just jumping in, but so as a speech pathologist, that's been a huge concern for me. Just what are we doing with speech language development, emotional development, visual development, all of that. What's interesting also is I grew up in the Middle East. And so I grew up in a culture that women often had their faces covered, and I've gotten questions like, oh, but what about when they're not, with the men in the room or different things. And so maybe there were moments where the babies would see full faces, but I was trying to find research with other cultures too that tend to cover their faces and see if there was any delays in development. And I wasn't able to find any, but I was really, for me personally, exactly with that whole cost standpoint, like I was like, I just want to find a way to like donate these masks to like parents in my NICU. But it was just very expensive, which actually then led me on like a year-long journey. And I ended up finding my own like provider, vendor, designed it out of India. And for me, I wanted certain things like organic cotton and chemical-free dyes and all of those types of things. So I actually have created this called the Happy Mask. And I'm happy to like work with other NICUs and get like, that is, my goal is really not financially at all. I just want to get this to as many people as I can. And for me, cost-wise, it was easiest to design my own and get it to be able to donate. So I am happy to share that information. But that was exact. And I haven't, I'm not researching it actively just because I don't have that infrastructure, but I know there's some articles that have come out, and I can tell you clinical practice-wise, the minute I see a mom put this on or a dad put this on, the way that the eye gaze changes. We've kind of worn it here and there with some of our older babies in the NICU when we're doing developmental play. It's really cool to watch, just their interactions, their engagement. I've even seen some suck patterns change when they've created that visual contact. So yes, I think there's a lot of work, and we'll know, I think, downstream what impact this is having. The flip side of that, or not flip side, the additional component of that is also watching when the adults wear it. All of a sudden you see them, because there's so many people we've met in this last year that we have no idea what they actually look like. And even like my parents have been wearing these to their medical appointments, and the doctors being like, oh, I didn't know you had a mustache, like to my dad, or, I didn't know this, or they're like, oh, we usually find out in surgery what the person looks like because they don't have a mask on. So I think the reach is, again, beyond our babies for sure. But yeah, this has been my passion, I guess, for the year.
That's fabulous, Ramya. And yes, people are asking about getting the information, and we can certainly include that in the email that you guys can all expect to be receiving following your attendance here at the summit. The other thing I might mention from a flip side of research is that we are starting a pilot student program for the summer. And so that is hopefully a way to get in with universities and to get students sparked about what it means to be trauma informed from the beginning of their careers. And then our hope is that we will have some researchers that come out of that to, we already have a couple people that are looking at researching the Trauma-Informed Professional Certificate Program. So on the flip side, we've got research happening on that end as well that I want to share with you. So if anybody else is interested in that aspect of things, we'd love to hear your ideas too. Does anyone else have any insights, anything else that they would like to share? We'd love to.
Panel had a response as well to that last question from Anne.
Yeah, I was just going to say, similar to Ramya, not only in an inpatient setting, but an outpatient setting, had concerns about that as well. So our hospital, we do have these available. The masks were hard to find from an infection control perspective. So I think Ramya mentioned hers were cloth. Unfortunately, our infection prevention would not approve those. So these were approved for like single patient use, like you would have with just the purple surgical masks. So there's many options out there to kind of look at options, but very value added for sure.
You know, the home too with their parents, and so when they're in the room together alone, you know, like, how can we advocate? How can we keep asking that question? Like, can parents bring their masks down, you know, when there aren't other people in the room, when we know that they're walking out the door to go home without masks, you know? And so I know maybe things aren't fully in place for that, but all of us being trauma informed, you know, we can keep just asking that question and asking it again. And okay, now we're a little bit further down the line, let's ask it again, so that we can just get back to a baby seeing their mom, seeing their dad's full face, you know, seeing all of that when they're close with them. Such a great point. Thank you, Anne, so much for bringing that up.
You're welcome. I'm wondering if maybe we should have the vaccine passports for NICU. Parents show proof of vaccination. You know, they can not have to wear a mask within, you know, like a few feet of other nursing staff or whatever.
And I was actually just going to mention that there's the role of the vaccine in all of this as well. So thank you for bringing that up.
Questions, jump in, raise your hand, and then we're going to have Mary close us out following that.
I've got one eye on the list. Oh, got
some input said they have private rooms, so they do let the parents take their masks down while the staff are not in the room. Yes. Everyone go share that with your hospital.
I love that. I think, you know, as we're, you know, look at all these great, LOL, so sorry, autocorrect you guys. Oh, yeah. You know, as we're kind of processing all of this information and just kind of coming back to the learning objectives, I hope that this has really given you guys an opportunity to explore ways that, you know, you can reawaken, you know, your passion, right? Grounded by caring science, grounded by an understanding, right down to your heart and soul about our common humanity, about our shared experiences, our shared experiences, I guess, and start to think about, so what will be that next step? You know, what's the next action? And when the panelists were talking, and they were just amazing presentations, I took little notes about, you know, Justin, when you were talking about the personal life piece of trauma-informed care, I mean, that was also something that, to be honest, when we were first developing the program, I wasn't really thinking about that, really hadn't expected that to fall out. But, you know, in the journey, discovered that you just don't turn this on and off, right? I mean, if you're trauma-informed, you're trauma-informed at the supermarket, at the dry cleaners, and at the unit. You know, it just becomes what Ramya talked about as, you know, lifestyle choice that is, you know, it doesn't end. I mean, I think to myself, you know, when will I be trauma informed? You know, I mean, because there are moments, I forget now who said it about, like, oh, Rami was joking with her husband about that's not very trauma informed. I mean, I actually think those things in my head too. You know, how you easily slip into these default settings, right? You know, like your default programming. But the thing about becoming trauma informed is now, instead of just kind of being oblivious to it, you notice it. And the thing that's cool about when you start noticing things is it becomes on your radar, and then you're aware of, I'm probably going to try not to say that again, or respond that way, and catch myself when it does start to, you know, flow off my tongue. Like, nope, I don't really want to go that way, and think differently about it. That's the thing that's been so remarkable to me. And having you guys, because you're all so clinically active right now. I mean, this is your life. I was operating from a place where I knew what my experiences had been and was building off of this and had hoped that this would have a more positive experience. But what you guys have been sharing, and not just here on the call, which has been absolutely mind-blowing, but in the comments, as you're moving through the program, in your reflections, I mean, I can't tell you how many times, I mean, you've literally hit me right in the soul, and you just think, wow, there's so much more to understand about this journey. And so we are really excited that we will be working with some researchers to really better understand, the impact of this personally and professionally. And I also wanted to just make a comment, and I know this is a phrase that Christy uses a lot, and I loved, when Shannon also mentioned the whole idea of working through the hands of the parents. And for the folks that are on the call that might not work in the baby world, right? It's working through the hands of the loved one. Maybe it's the husband, maybe it's the grandmother, maybe it's somebody else, and helping them, empower them. And to circle back to Vicky's comment about, the resistors, the parents that sometimes resist, maybe, shifting gears and working through the hands of that person, because really what they're saying to you, it's not the words. You have to listen to the feelings, and then flipping that around and working through their hands to help them feel empowered, to help them feel seen. So I think that's just kind of last minute thoughts. I'm really excited that you guys were so interested in this. I saw Sharon a couple of times. Sharon said that you made a comment about wanting to learn more, and we will be following up with an email. Oh, cool, Terry, you wrote that in the box already, so I don't need to say that. But we're really, really excited that you've spent this time with us. Super, super grateful to Justin, Shannon, Ramya for sharing your experiences and certainly giving of your time to spend with us on this summit. We've got, so much more information, to share with you guys. If there are any questions that come up after the fact, just, reach out to us. You'll have our email. You can always hit us up on our Facebook group, or, even on our website, we've got a contact form. So it's all about how we can best serve you to help you provide the best service to those, babies, families, children, colleagues in crisis. So thank you so very much for your time. This has been absolutely more than I could have hoped for. Thank you so much.
So much love to you. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Justin, Shannon, Ramya. Thank you. Mwah, you guys are the best.
You guys were amazing.
Oh,
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you.
amazing. You guys rock.
Right.
And for speaking up.